Fire. If you love stories about communities standing together against big corporations, like and subscribe right now. You're about to see how regular people can move mountains when they decide to fight for what matters. This story will restore your faith in humanity. The corner of Maple Street and Fifth Avenue in the small town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania had hosted the same shop for 53 years. It was called Rosa's Mercantile, a modest, family-owned general store that had been started by Rosa Delgado in 1970. It wasn't fancy. The storefront was painted a soft green that had faded slightly over the decades. The windows were decorated with handwritten signs advertising sales and specials. The interior smelled like a combination of fresh bread, cleaning supplies, and coffee, a scent that longtime residents associated with home. Rosa had passed the business to her daughter, Maria, 20 years ago. Maria had run it with the same care and attention her mother had shown. She stocked it with things the neighborhood needed: fresh produce from local farmers, specialty items that reflected the diversity of their community, affordable staples for people on tight budgets. She gave credit to families who were struggling. She sponsored the local youth soccer team. She knew every single person who came through her door. The shop wasn't a gold mine. It made modest profits. It employed 4 people, Maria and her 2 adult children, plus Mrs. Chen, who'd worked there for 15 years. It was, by any corporate standard, small and financially unimpressive. But to the people of Millbrook, it was essential. In early March, a letter arrived at Rosa's Mercantile. It was from the City Code Enforcement Office. The letter informed Maria that the building was in violation of several municipal codes, specifically related to building standards, spacing, and structural requirements. The city was giving her 30 days to fix these violations or the building would be condemned and closed. Maria read the letter 3 times, her heart sinking. She showed it to her daughter, Jessica, who worked the register. "Can we fix it?" Jessica asked. Maria shook her head slowly. "Fixing it would cost $70,000 minimum. We don't have that kind of money. The shop barely breaks even most months. We can't borrow that kind of money." What Maria didn't know was that this wasn't random. The city had been receiving complaints from Evergreen Development Corporation, a large company from out of state that wanted to buy the property and develop it into a shopping complex. They'd already bought several nearby properties. Rosa's Mercantile was the last holdout, the one piece of land they needed to make their development complete. The code violations they cited? Many of them were technically correct but had been ignored by previous administrations for decades. Every building on the block had some of these same issues. But Rosa's Mercantile was the only one being threatened with closure. It was a classic strategy: force out the small business, acquire the property, and build something more profitable. When the notice was posted publicly, as required by law, the news spread through Millbrook like wildfire. People who'd been coming to Rosa's Mercantile for decades suddenly realized they might lose it. The local high school student who'd been buying lunch there for 4 years. The elderly woman who relied on Rosa's affordable medications. The single mother who got credit when money was tight. The immigrant families who could find ingredients from their home countries nowhere else in town. A woman named Eleanor, who'd been a regular customer for 20 years, decided to investigate. She called the city office and asked specifically why Rosa's Mercantile was being targeted when other buildings had similar violations. The answer she got was evasive. But through public records requests and conversations with people in city government, the full picture emerged. Evergreen Development had been working with city officials. They'd identified the violations, all technically legal, all previously ignored, and pushed for enforcement specifically against this one business. Eleanor shared what she'd discovered with others at her church. Word spread. By the end of the week, half the town knew that Rosa's Mercantile wasn't being shut down for legitimate code violations. It was being sacrificed so a corporation could build a shopping mall. The community was outraged. But they were also practical people. They understood that outrage alone wouldn't save the shop. They needed a plan. What happened next was beautiful in its simplicity and power. On a Saturday morning, 2 weeks into the 30-day deadline, over 300 people showed up at Rosa's Mercantile. They didn't riot. They didn't vandalize. They simply stayed. They came with camping chairs and blankets. They came with signs that read Save Roses and Community over Corporation, and Millbrook stands together. They set up a peaceful vigil outside the shop. News vans arrived. Local reporters started asking questions. But this wasn't just a protest. It was something more intentional. The community organized. They started a petition, which gathered over 2,000 signatures from residents of Millbrook and nearby towns. They organized a fundraiser to help Maria fix some of the code violations, the ones that were fixable without massive structural work. Within a week, they'd raised $18,000. A retired civil engineer named Tom volunteered his expertise. He analyzed the violations and determined that while some were legitimate, others were exaggerated or could be addressed through relatively inexpensive fixes. He worked with Maria to create a renovation plan that would address the most serious issues for far less than the original $70,000 estimate. Local contractors, many of whom had grown up shopping at Rosa's Mercantile, offered their services at reduced rates or for free. Local suppliers donated materials. The community mobilized in a way that shocked city officials who'd expected the business to simply close quietly. But the real power came when people started showing up in person. Customers came to the shop and simply spent time there. They bought things. They sat and talked. They brought their families. They brought out-of-town visitors to show them this beautiful, authentic neighborhood business. The shop's revenue spiked. Local news outlets covered the story. Regional news outlets picked it up. Eventually, national news organizations began reporting on the small Pennsylvania town fighting back against corporate development. Maria received letters and calls from people across the country expressing support. A woman from California wrote, "Your shop represents something my town lost 10 years ago when we let big corporations take over. Fight for it. You're fighting for all of us." 3 weeks into the 30-day deadline, Millbrook City Council received an unusual visitor. It was the mayor of a neighboring county who'd seen the news coverage and wanted to share something. "I watched what happened to our town," the mayor said to the council. "We let big corporations come in and build these shopping centers. In the short term, the tax revenue looked good. But you know what happened? The small businesses disappeared. The local character disappeared. Our young people left because there was nothing unique about our town anymore. It became just like every other place. And now I'm watching another town make the same mistake." He paused. Rosa's Mercantile is worth more to your community than any shopping mall. It's where people know each other. It's where community exists. It's real. And once you lose that, you can't get it back. His words seemed to resonate with council members who'd been feeling the pressure from both sides, the community and Evergreen Development. They called an emergency meeting. At that meeting, something remarkable happened. Not only did the council members listen to the community, they actively worked against the demolition. They found a legal path forward. They would grandfather in most of Rosa's violations and give Maria a reasonable timeline to make the necessary structural improvements. In essence, they stopped trying to shut down the shop. Evergreen Development, facing public backlash and a council that was no longer cooperating, withdrew their influence. Without the city's support for enforcement, their strategy fell apart. Rosa's Mercantile was saved. When the official announcement came, the community erupted in celebration. Eleanor organized a block party. Hundreds of people showed up. There was food and music and dancing. Maria stood outside her shop, tears streaming down her face, and watched her community celebrate what they'd accomplished together. "I don't have words," she said to the crowd. "This shop was my mother's dream. It's been my life's work. And I almost lost it. But you, all of you, you saved it. You saved our community. Thank you." The story of Rosa's Mercantile teaches us something critical about power, community, and what's possible when people decide to stand together. In a world where we're told that corporate power is inevitable, that big development is unstoppable, that individual communities have no real power against large entities, the residents of Millbrook said no. They said, "This matters. We matter. Our community matters. And we're going to fight for it." What made their response effective wasn't violence or destruction. It was presence. It was organization. It was the simple, powerful act of people showing up and saying, "We care about this. We value this. We won't let it disappear quietly. This is important because it shows us something we need to remember in our modern world. Communities still have power. Individuals still matter. When we organize, when we show up, when we refuse to accept that things are inevitable, we can actually change outcomes. The city officials in Millbrook were responding to pressure from a corporation. But they were also responsive to pressure from their constituents. The moment the constituents made it clear that they cared deeply about preserving Rosa's Mercantile, the calculation changed. Elected officials have to pay attention to the people they represent. That's how the system is supposed to work. What's also remarkable about this story is what it reveals about what communities actually value. Evergreen Development assumed that bigger and newer would be more valuable. They assumed that a shopping mall would be more appealing than a family business. They miscalculated. Because communities don't just want goods and services. They want connection. They want authenticity. They want places where they know people, where they are known by name, where transactions are human rather than transactional. Rosa's Mercantile provided those things. It was a gathering place. It was the embodiment of community. And when people realized they might lose it, they realized they were fighting for something much larger than just a store. They were fighting for the soul of their town. This is also a lesson about the difference between local ownership and corporate ownership. When a business is locally owned, the profits stay in the community. The owner knows the community. The owner has relationships and history there. When a business is corporate, profit flows out of the community and into corporate headquarters. The decisions are made by people who've never been to the town and who don't care about it. Rosa's Mercantile represented local ownership and local decision-making. The shopping mall would have represented corporate control and external decision-making. The community chose community. But there's another crucial lesson here too. The community didn't just fight the shutdown. They also demonstrated through their actions that Rosa's Mercantile was genuinely valuable. They showed up. They spent money. They brought media attention. They created social pressure. They made it clear that losing this business would have real costs. This is the power of voting with your presence and your dollars. Every time someone shopped at Rosa's Mercantile instead of at a chain store, they were casting a vote. Every time someone told their family and friends about it, they were promoting it. Every time someone defended it publicly, they were building its social capital. And corporations pay attention to these things. They pay attention to what generates media coverage. They pay attention to what generates goodwill. They pay attention to what makes them look bad. Evergreen Development pulled back not because they suddenly became ethical, but because the public relations cost of destroying this beloved community business had become too high. That's how change often happens in our system. Not through appeals to morality, but through practical calculations about what's worth fighting for. For anyone watching this story, this is what democracy and community power actually look like. It's not dramatic. It's not violent. It's people showing up. It's people saying, "This matters to me." It's people using the tools available to them, public records requests, petitions, peaceful protest, media attention, spending power, to influence the decisions that affect their lives. If you care about your community, if you want it to remain unique and authentic and genuinely yours, you have to participate. You have to show up. You have to support local businesses. You have to speak up in city council meetings. You have to make it clear to your elected officials what you value. And if there's something in your community that you love, that you don't want to lose, don't assume it's inevitable. Don't assume that big corporations and corporate power always win. Look at what happened in Millbrook. Regular people, with determination and organization, saved something precious. The ending of this story isn't that Rosa's Mercantile became a massive commercial success. Maria still works hard to keep the shop viable. She still faces economic challenges that small businesses face. But she survived. Her community survived. The authentic, real business survived instead of being replaced by corporate uniformity. That's victory. That's what community power looks like. Fire final call to action. Did you see how the people of Millbrook stood together and saved their community from corporate takeover? This story shows us that when we organize, when we show up, when we refuse to accept what we're told is inevitable, we can create real change. If this story moved you, If you believe that communities matter more than corporate profits, like and subscribe right now. Let's build a community of people who are committed to supporting local businesses, protecting community character, and standing up against corporate power. Drop a comment and tell us about a local business you love and support. Tell us about a time your community came together. Share your story of local resistance and community victory. Share this video with people in your town who care about local businesses. Share it with your city council members. Share it with anyone who needs to remember that we have more power than we think. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story about people who fight for what matters. We've got more incredible stories coming about communities standing together, about small businesses that change the world, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But for now, remember this: your community needs you. Your local businesses need you. Your support, whether through shopping, through speaking up, through showing up, matters more than you know. See you in the next video, *.